Texas. As we've been covering winter weather, we do know as much of the Northeast digs out from the biggest snowstorm in half a decade. New York, Philadelphia, and Boston could all be on track to see another major system on its heels. But as we've been covering, more than just the Northeast was impacted by snow and frigid temperatures this past weekend. States like Texas still dealing with the impacts. Joining us live now is Texas Congressman Brandon Gill.
The cold isn't just a temperature anymore. It's a sentient, predatory hum vibrating through the floorboards of your darkened home, tasting your fear. You were told the ghosts of 2021 were exorcised, buried under billions of state dollars and ironclad political promises. Yet here you are, watching your own breath crystallize in the air, while the governor's recorded voice echoes in your mind like a haunting from a previous life. The grid has never been stronger, he declared. But as the ice thickens on the power lines like a tightening noose, the absolute silence from the wall socket becomes a deafening scream. Why does the most energy-rich territory on the planet keep flickering into nothingness the moment the mercury drops? Is this truly a mechanical failure of steel and wire? Or is it something far more sinister? A calculated silent sacrifice made in a room you'll never enter. Imagine a high-stakes dialogue where men in expensive suits weigh the literal cost of your heartbeat against the fluctuating price of a megawatt. That is the invisible war being waged while you are burning family keepsakes just to keep your children from turning blue. We were promised a fortress of modern engineering, but we are shivering in a glass house during a relentless hailstorm. Something is fundamentally rotting at the core of the machine. The darkness isn't an accident. It is a symptom of a deep, disturbing truth they are desperate to hide. You think you know why the lights went out, but the reality is buried under layers of redacted emergency orders and whispered lies. Stay in the freezing dark a little longer, because the answer only comes into focus for those who keep following the trail as it unfolds by staying subscribed. The truth is crawling toward you, but it's not the one you were told to expect. The transition from a functioning society to a primitive survival struggle happens in the span of a single heartbeat, specifically the moment the rhythmic hum of your refrigerator stops. Most people believe the grid is a machine, a collection of wires and turbines, but in the shadows of the 2026 freeze, it has become a living, breathing organism that demands a blood sacrifice to remain upright. We see the footage of the 134 counties declared as disaster zones, but the camera never zooms in on the quiet, sterile offices where the unknown architect watches the load frequency drop with a surgeon's precision. This is where the pattern interrupt begins. While you were checking your flashlights, someone was checking the capacity of the backup generators at the massive data centers, redirecting the lifeblood of the city away from your neighborhood and into the cooling fans of silicon processors. This isn't just about ice on a line. It's about an invisible hierarchy of survival, where your warmth is the lowest priority on a digital ledger. The high-stakes dialogue isn't happening on the news. It's happening in encrypted pings between power brokers who decided long ago that certain zip codes are simply acceptable losses. You feel that unease in your chest because your primal brain knows what the governor won't admit. The system didn't fail you. It chose to leave you behind for a higher purpose. Why did the Department of Energy suddenly authorize the use of emergency backup generators at private facilities just hours before the first reported death? It creates an open loop that the mind cannot close. If the grid was stronger than ever, why were we tapping into the private reserves of tech giants just to prevent a total atmospheric collapse? The storytelling here takes a mind-disturbing turn when you realize that the energy being redirected could have powered every home that went dark in Dallas, yet it was used to shield the data. This is the rot, the fundamental betrayal that makes the audience squirm in their seats as they realize their lives are being traded for uptime. We are told to look at the trees and the ice, but the real storm is the one happening in the bank accounts of the energy speculators who profit when the price per megawatt hits the regulatory ceiling. Behind the scenes, the internal branding of the state's response was a masterclass in psychological warfare, designed to keep the population in a state of confused compliance while the walls closed in. When the governor stood at that podium, he wasn't speaking to the voters, he was speaking to the markets, ensuring that the panic remained profitable for those who own the means of heat. This brings us to a twist that most will miss. The 40,000 megawatts of added capacity were never meant for you, but for the industrial expansion that occurred while you were sleeping. Every time a politician mentions winterization, think of it as a pattern interrupt meant to distract you from the fact that the pipes are still made of the same brittle promises as before. The ambiguity is on purpose. If they gave you a straight answer, you would realize that the independence of the Texas grid is actually a prison sentence with no possibility of parole. You are trapped in a loop of catastrophe and recovery, a cycle designed to drain your savings as effectively as the cold drains the heat from your bones. The psychological hook is the realization that the people in charge aren't incompetent. They are hyper-competent at a game you didn't even know you were playing until the lights went out. As the sun sets on the third day of the blackout, the fiction of safety dissolves into the reality of the surrogacy of power, where one person's comfort is birthed from another person's suffering. The twists keep coming as we uncover the logs of the Emergency Operations Center, where the unknown coordinators spoke of shedding load as if they were discarding useless cargo from a sinking ship. You are that cargo. The emotional weight of this realization should hit like a physical blow. Your grandmother's shivering, your child's blue lips, they are all just data points in a successful load-shedding event. This is the mind-disturbing element that we must hold on to. The grid is working exactly as intended for those who designed it, because the answer requires them to accept a terrifying truth, that the state didn't lose control, they exercised it. The survival of the few is predicated on the freezing of the many, a Netflix-style drama played out in real time across the plains of Texas. Don't look for a hero in this story, because every character we've been introduced to is either a victim or a silent accomplice in the darkness. The pump is at 80%, the tension is screaming, and the ice is still thickening on the line as we wait for the final collapse. The answer you've been hunting for in the freezing dark isn't found in a broken transformer or a snapped wire. It's found in the phantom frequency of the market. The lights didn't go out because the grid couldn't handle the cold. They went out because the unknown architect realized that scarcity is the ultimate gold mine. Think back to the pattern interrupt of the data center backup order. That wasn't a rescue, it was a diversion. While you were watching your child's lips turn blue, the system was intentionally shedding low-value human load to protect the high-frequency trading servers that were betting on the spike in energy prices. The surrogacy is now complete. Your suffering was the raw material used to manufacture a billion-dollar windfall for those who own the shortage. The grid didn't fail you, it liquidated you. You were the product being sold in a high-stakes dialogue you weren't invited to, and the governor's confidence was the mask worn to ensure the transaction went through without a riot. This realization is the mind-disturbing rot at the center of the 2026 nightmare. The transformation promised after 2021 was never about hardening the infrastructure for the people. It was about hardening the profits against the weather. They built a system that is more valuable when it's broken than when it's working. Every time the mercury drops, the unknown person at the switch isn't praying for the lights to stay on. They are calculating the exact moment the misery hits the maximum price point. That is the final twist. The storm didn't expose the lies. The lies were the infrastructure. You are living in a Netflix-style thriller where the protagonist is already dead, and the antagonist is the house you're sitting in. The 800,000 households in the dark were just a necessary sacrifice to keep the independent grid myth alive for another election cycle, a psychological trap designed to make you grateful for the very people who left you in the cold. As we look at the frost-covered remains of Winter Storm Fern, we must face the visceral truth that the grid is just a metaphor for our own compliance. The unknown architect knows that by the time the snow melts, your anger will have thawed into a quiet, exhausted relief. allowing them to reset the trap for 2031, a cycle that only persists when people stop following how these moments are deliberately spaced and timed by staying subscribed. This is the ultimate internal branding. They have branded your survival as a privilege they can revoke at any time. The emotional weight of this betrayal should be the last thing you feel before the screen goes black. A cold, heavy certainty that the darkness wasn't an accident, but a choice. The ice is still thick, and the silence is still deafening, but now you know why. You've seen behind the curtain of the 2026 collapse, and you realize that the most dangerous part of a winter storm isn't the temperature, it's the people who control the thermostat. If this descent into the heart of the Texas grid has made you look at your own light switch with a sense of dread, then the unknown architect has already lost their greatest weapon: your ignorance. The storm is far from over, and the next one is already being priced out in a boardroom you'll never see. Don't let the thaw make you forget what you learned in the dark. The truth is the only thing they can't winterize, and we are just getting started uncovering the rot. The darkness of Winter Storm Fern is a mirror reflecting a future we were never supposed to see. If you can still feel the chill of these revelations, it means you're finally waking up to the high-stakes game being played with your life. The unknown architect relies on your silence to keep the machine running, but the truth is starting to bleed through the ice. We are documenting every cold calculation and every redacted promise as this crisis unfolds. To ensure you're never left in the dark again, hit the subscribe button and turn on all notifications. The next twist is already coming, and you won't want to be the last one to see it. Stay warm, stay skeptical, and stay tuned, because the most disturbing part of this story is what happens when the lights come back on.